In 1897, Black America's most prolific scholar, W.B. Du Bois, wrote a book called The Negro in Business. And it's a thick volume, and you'll probably only be able to get that book at some of the top universities, whatever. Clark Atlanta, the Woodruff Library, has a copy, and I would dip into it and read it. When he was a professor, he taught economics at Atlanta University at the time. During the summer months, he would get on the train and he would traipse up and down the eastern seaboard interviewing successful Black business owners for this book. That's why I'm a Johnny-come-lately, what I've done Du Bois did in 1897. Now, I share all that to share this. Within the first 30 pages of that book, he has two profound statements. Number one, he says the man or woman who won't control his or her finances won't control anything else. So what does that mean? Well, if you don't care about the money in your pocket, what do you care about the quality of education here in your community? What do you care about your institutions? What do you care about the crime levels and whatever? You don't even care about the money in your pocket. And then number two, he says nothing positive will ever occur in a community that fails to circulate its dollars. Now, he said this in 1897, and we're still struggling with that today in the Black community in 2020. Black America, read the email, read the text message. Come on, circulates dollars. So when you talk about circulation of dollars, no group, top of the list, number one, East Indians, Arab community in the United States, the average dollar stays in that community minimum 45 days. Number two, Asian Americans. Asian Americans, average dollar stays in the Asian community about 24 days. The average dollar stays in the Jewish community about 19 days before leaving. In Black America, it's 6 hours and then it's out of there. But that wasn't the norm, because when you look at the Tulsa riots, what I was about to share with you, my wife is from Oklahoma City, and we were college students. We got married our senior year in college. She initially was at Oklahoma State, and I was a student at OU. She transferred, and we finished. But my mother-in-law, her mother, was born and raised, she was a small child in Tulsa. And she told us vividly, before she made her transition, the day in April in 1921, when her father came home from work, scooped her and her sister up, grabbed them just like picking up two babies, and said, "We got to get out of here." And she said, "Daddy, where we going?" I said, "I don't know, but we got to get out of here." They were burning down the community, okay? Right there, Greenwood, Archer, and Pine, Karmetria, a 3640 block area. You had the absolute best, baddest Black folks on the planet living in that 36 to 40 block area, 1921 Black Wall Street. You had more than 600 Black businesses. I mean, you had 3 churches, you had a hospital, you had a bus line, you had 6 airplanes. The school system you had in that 36 to 40 block area was second to none in the state. Why? Because you had school teachers. One had a doctorate from Northwestern. My alma mater, teaching elementary school kids. Okay, so you had about 600 businesses. You had 2 hotels. You had 30 restaurants. It's on and on and on and on and on. 21 grocery stores and the like. But going back to circulation of the Black dollar, they said that the average dollar, 1921 Black Wall Street, stayed in that community anywhere from 6 months to a year. 6 months to a year. Can it be done? Yeah, it can be done. The bottom line, do what other groups are doing. Don't reinvent the wheel. Do what other groups. Now, I'm not saying be an easy touch. You look at my wife. If you are African American and you are in business and she needs something, she will find you. She is a stalwart on doing that. But you're going to do it right, and you're going to commit to excellence. And so the bottom line is, when you talk about economic development and you talk about the wealth gap, a lot of the wealth gap, that can be thrown on us because we've given our finances away. All right, you have almost 180 countries that belong to the United Nations just in terms of wealth. Just in terms of wealth, we're in the top 20. The problem isn't, our money, it's what we do with our money. That's the bottom line. And every other group makes sure that that money goes into the community. And I'm going to close it out with this. All right, Karmetria, you got $1 and I got $1, but I'm going to give 95 cents of my dollar to you. And now you got $1.95 and I got a nickel. These are questions that we have to face as a community. Number one, how can my car be as nice as yours? How can my home be as nice as yours? How can my institutions be as vast and as steeped in tradition as yours? How can my IQ be as high as yours? So these are changes that we have to do as, we focus on this racial tension society and making changes in terms of our own personal economic development. Let's get that straight before we do anything else.
Welcome to another episode of the Mind Your Business podcast. In this episode, I speak with Dr. Dennis Kimbro, author, coach, and professor at Clark Atlanta University. He has interviewed peak performers all over the world and learned the best ideas, strategies, and success principles from their words. He's heard the same things enough times to know that all people who succeed tend to follow the same path, and that all people who have not succeeded tend to fall into the same pit over and over again. Today, I talked to him about what factors make someone a successful entrepreneur, what key ideas ensure success, and how to adapt your definition of success during critical and difficult times. We've included labels in the podcast description that let you jump around to different topics of our conversation if you're looking to only listen to certain parts. Otherwise, sit back, relax, and enjoy the entire discussion. If you like what you hear, subscribe to the podcast either on YouTube or your preferred podcasting platform so you don't miss new episodes, and please leave a rating on Apple Podcast and or Spotify to help the podcast get noticed. I release new episodes on the 7th of every month. Without further ado, here's our conversation. You've been in the room with successful millionaires.
A bunch of them.
Talk to us about how did you even get in the room?
Great question. When I was writing my first book, my first book actually was, What Makes the Great Great. And I pivoted 2 years after that at the request of W. Clement Stone and the Napoleon Hill Foundation to switch to Think and Grow Rich. But the bottom line is, Karmetria, I stepped out there. They didn't know me and I didn't know them. But I knew, there's a way, and you can't GET to your ASK. And I put together a bold letter and I went after it. But here's the key. I looked at the list and I said, who is the king or queen of the mountain? I'm going after that individual first because I knew, or I thought, that everybody else would fall in line. So at that particular time was John Johnson, it was Berry Gordy and those folks. And though I did get other folks before I got them, because it took me about 2.5 years to get John Johnson, after I got him, everything seemed to click.
Sure.
So, and I had to pivot again because back then there was no caller waiting, caller ID, pager, cell phone, and the like. So I sent a letter to John Johnson of Ebony Magazine, and I mapped out, why I needed this interview and this, that, and everything. And I was a pharmaceutical sales rep at the time. Mm-hmm. Okay, I was the first African-American male, and I had 2 jobs. As soon as I got out of college, I was the first African-American male in the rotational program of Texas Instruments in Dallas, Texas. Mm-hmm. And then I was the first African-American male in the rotational program for SmithKline and French Pharmaceutical. So my first tour duty was manufacturing in Philadelphia. Then they, shifted us out to Atlanta, and I carried the bag. I was in marketing and sales. And that's when I was hot and heavy with the book. So I was working a territory near my house. And I said, lunchtime. do I want to go to McDonald's? Do I want to go to Burger King? Or do I want to go by the house and maybe, eat some leftovers and blah, blah, blah. So something said, go by the house. And when I went home for lunch, the phone rang and I picked it up. It was John Johnson of Ebony Magazine.
Responding to your inquiry.
Responding, not his assistant, not his secretary. Mm-hmm. He personally called.
Mm-hmm. I like when you said, if you don't GET what you don't ASK. You don't get what you don't ask for.
Yeah.
So tell us about, you were in the room with millionaires, successful entrepreneurs. Share your most memorable entrepreneur story where you've interviewed someone. Who was that with, and kind of set the tone for us?
I've had so many. I interviewed John. I happened to interview John Johnson twice, and I had, from Damon John, T.D. Jakes, Tyler Perry. I mean, they all had something to add. But the key is, one of the things that I like to be known for, I was, and the same thing with Napoleon Hill. When Napoleon Hill and Andrew Carnegie met, the reason why they kicked it off together, the reason why, they were seamless together. Okay, I was like Hill, dead broke, and Carnegie, king of the mountain, okay? But what drew them together is that Hill wasn't caught up in all the bling bling. Mm-hmm. He wasn't caught up in all the rapture. Man, look at this guy. He got a 64-room, mansion on Fifth Avenue, New York, overlooking Central Park. His butler came down and took me back to his book line study. And that's the same thing. When I met, John Johnson and Earl Graves and Kathy Hughes, I wasn't caught up in all that stuff.
Sure.
What I was caught up, let's talk about the mindset. And see, that's where, I tell people all the time, here we are in this COVID pandemic, mm-hmm. All right? And businesses are dropping out like flies and everything. So I asked these entrepreneurs, I said, what would your business be like if Steve Jobs or Bill Gates or Oprah Winfrey were on your team? Well, I would do ABC, XYZ, 1, 2, 3. Well, damn it, act like they're on your team. Because so many entrepreneurs, and you had a question, the difference between an entrepreneur and a small business owner, they fall in the trap of making excuses. Well, if I had the resources, if Oprah Winfrey were on my team, I would have the resources to do ABC, XYZ, 1, 2. It's not the resources, Karmetria. It's the resourcefulness,
wow.
That does it, man. It's okay. So you don't have the money. Okay. What do you have that you can use?
Right.
Well, I got a head full of ideas, and I got a briefcase and a book bag and a book full of ambition. Well, use it.
Right.
And they all were at that point where they didn't have the resources. When you read Oprah's story, it'll put you on your knees. She didn't have to be here. They could have got an abortion for her. I mean, her family had all types of issues and challenges. And here she came up and she was abused and she was neglected. And she had to be resourceful in order to do this. No one gave her anything. And the same story is true of John Johnson. John Johnson in the 1940s hawked his mother's furniture for $500. All right, so let's do the calculus. Let's do the statistics. $500 equal today is worth $7,700. Mm-hmm. Well, damn it, it's still nothing, because when you compare that to Jeff Bezos, okay, let's talk about Bezos. Okay, here he is in the early 1990s. He's got his fancy degree from engineering from Princeton. And what does he do? He's from Seattle, and he goes to New York, and he's a part-time day trader and investment banker. So what happened? Well, in 1993, an undergraduate student at the University of Illinois creates the first website. What's a website? I don't know. So he says, what's a website? And he sees where the internet, over an 18-month period, Karmetria, grows 2,300%. He says, I got to be a part of this.
Sure.
Immediately quits that job in New York, goes back and lives with his parents in Seattle, lives out of the garage. His parents said, what are you doing, man? We're still paying for your education, blah, blah, blah. He says, I'm going to sell books online. Resourcefulness. He said, what do you mean? We didn't pay this for you to sell books. First of all, what is online, Jeff? And the rest is history.
So resources versus
resourceful.
resourcefulness.
Yes.
I like that. So with that, What has been the mindset of successful entrepreneurs? What have you seen, and what has your research shown?
Well, the DNA, number one, from what I've seen, and I had face-to-face interviews, and when you look at the fifth book, The Wealth Choice, number one, I had face-to-face interviews with about 60, 70, and when I set out, I didn't want, any athletes. I didn't want any entertainers. We're overrepresented in that area. I want folks that maybe you'd pass the street on Peachtree Street and wouldn't even know it until, you talk to them and you look at the business and you look at their growth and the like. So I had about 60 to 70 interviews and with the Steve Harveys, and I spent a day with Kirk Franklin. I mean, all the folks over here. Then number two, I had 6 focus groups around the country. I had 3 focus groups here in Atlanta. I had a huge focus group in Washington, D.C. Okay, there were no less than 100 black millionaires in that focus group in Washington, D.C. Bob Johnson, BET, was in that room. Carla Harris, most powerful black woman on Wall Street, was in that room. The Roberts brothers, Michael and Steve Roberts, they own, 2 or 3 hotels right here in Atlanta. They were in the room. So, I got a chance to see how they interact with their peers. Mm-hmm. And the way that they interact with peers is the way that you and I would interact with each other. I mean, no one is, they network and how you doing and this, that, and everything. And they take mental notes and the like. And then last but not least, I used a full-blown survey, 118 question survey, try to get into the thinking. So what is the DNA of an entrepreneur? Number one, they're driven. They're driven. Number two, if I ask you what you do for a living, if I ask you, I said, what do you do? Would you call it a job? Would you call it a career? Would you call it work? Anytime you use terms like job and work, it seems heavy. Well, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, entrepreneurship's a love affair. And why do I say a love affair? Baby, you talking 14, 16-hour days. Mm-hmm. And then once you get, just the rigor of the days and the discipline, you better be in love with what you sell. You better be in love with your product or your service. And, I made the comment to you when we were at lunch. I said, entrepreneurs solve problems. I said, you can be an entrepreneur in corporate America. You can be an entrepreneur, working in social service agency. I see myself as an entrepreneur working in academia. I try to solve the problems, and I have a customer. My customer is my students. My customer is my dean. Be more efficient and more effective. And I used that same mindset before in 1992, 1991, here's the book over there, Think and Grow with Your Black Choice, it's released. And I got job offers to teach. And I had a presentation at National Black MBA, and the dean of Clark Atlanta School of Business, Ed Irons, was there. And he said, when you get through signing those books, I'd like to talk to you and blah, blah, blah. And he said, come visit me in my office. Didn't have any idea what he had in mind. And he gave me, he says, when you think about teaching, man, go ahead, send me your bio and this, that, and everything. I'm going to give you an offer right here. Okay, so I said to my wife, if I ever go into the classroom, and I know I'm going to go in the classroom because this is what I do, this is what I'm called to do is teach, I'm going to do it right. And so what I did, Karmetria, I went around the country and I sat before, just like me and you were sitting talking, I sat before the best educators at that time. I went out to California, Stanford School of Business, and I literally had lunch with Charles Bonini. Dr. Kimbro, who the hell is Charles Bonini? I am so glad you asked who is Charles Bonini. He teaches entrepreneurship at Stanford B School, and it was in his class that Phil Knight got the idea for Nike shoes.
Wow.
Yes. Wow. And I said, what was it like with Nike, with Phil Knight in the class and blah, 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 and this, that, and everything. And I listened to his pedagogy, and he told me the reason why he teaches. And he says, I'm only here to enable the dreams of my students. Stanford professor. And then I interviewed Marva Collins, Westside Preparatory in Chicago.
Yes.
And I said, Marva, why in the world did you leave the public school system to start your own academy? And she said to me, my kids were reading on grade levels far and above anybody else in the district. My kids were going on to college far and above anybody else in the district. We were scoring higher on standardized tests than anybody else. And not once did a superintendent or deputy superintendent ever come in my classroom and say, Marva, hell of a job. She said, I'm out of here.
Right.
So it was that type of thing. So number one, driven. Number two, the work is a calling. Again, going back, if I asked you, would you tell me it's a career? Would you tell me that it's a mission? Hopefully you will tell me it's a mission, what
Right.
you're doing here. Because if it's a mission, you're not going to do it for the money.
Right.
And all the millionaires that I sat before and I interviewed, not one, Karmetria, not one in my research could tell me the day that they became seven figures. It was like any other day.
Sure.
They didn't do it for the cash.
So they're driven, they love what they do, and they solve problems.
Yep, and they solve problems, and not an easy task. You
Sure.
got to throw that in there.
Sure.
Not an easy, and they signed up for that, and they knew that. Okay, so what do you do when you fail? Well, you learn from it. Number one, they learn from the failure. Okay. Number two, they ask the question, how can I grow? Okay, so I did this, man. I jumped out there. I got my teeth kicked. I got my hands spanked. Okay, how can I grow? And number three, how can I move on? Okay, now we know not what to do. That type of thing. So, and then the last thing, number six, they make things happen. Yeah, well, small business people, they run small businesses, and like entrepreneurs solve problems. They add value, and that is critical.
So that's a great differentiator. The difference between an entrepreneur and a small business: an entrepreneur solves problems and add value, and a small business,
they run small
businesses. I think the mindset of an entrepreneur is totally different. You just told us the DNA and the makeup of it.
Mm-hmm.
So you told us about the DNA. How can an entrepreneur remain resilient during this time? I saw statistics on CNN that broke my heart, right?
Oh, yeah.
Over 60% of small businesses are going to fail as a result of COVID-19.
Yep.
And if you're looking at that, if you're looking at ways to sustain your business, you're thinking about your what's next, help us out. What should an entrepreneur be thinking and doing during this climate?
Well, I've seen the same data, but I'm of the thinking that many of these businesses are going to collapse anyway.
Okay.
Why do I say that? How in the world can you say that, man? Because there's every entrepreneur, every business owner, they're running two businesses: the business that they're in now, and the business that enterprise is going to become 5 to 10 years down the road. I mean, you got to think, the worst thing in the world that you can do, and that's the key to dominance, Karmetria. Okay, everybody is hungry. At one time, Beyonce was hungry. At one time, Earl Grey's Black Enterprise magazine was hungry. Oprah Winfrey was hungry. Michael Jordan was hungry, and that hunger allowed them to reach their goals and objectives. So what is the difference between those that are still at the top and those that fell by the wayside? Well, when they reach the goals and objectives, they maintain that level of hunger. And then after they reach the goals and objectives, and they still got that hunger, they still got their desire, well, that's dominance. Well, you got to take the same mindset. I don't care what you're doing. Okay? So, all right, so here's the pandemic and blah, 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 and you got your business. Well, let's sit back. So number one, top of the list, you got to find a way to digitize your company.
Right.
And a lot of small businesses didn't do that.
Sure.
There are 21 different ways to market or sell a product or service. And number 21 is internet, which means digital. And when we talked on the phone, what is Netflix? It's Blockbusters digitized.
That's right.
What is Zoom? It's the office meeting digitized. What is Google? It's the public library digitized. Okay, so show me how you're going to digitize this business. And that's what you're doing right now. What is a podcast? It's talk radio digitized, man. So it's radio without the music digitized. And it's making easy. I mean, if you got iTunes and you got this, man, and not only that, it's the classroom digitized because people are listening and growing and developing. So number one, you got to digitize it. Number two, you got to identify not only who's your customer and not only who's your perfect customer, okay, but you got to contact that customer who's going to be with you through thick and thin. Through thick and thin. That entrepreneur that, I know that my product is sort of waned. It's lacking in everything. I don't have all the resources that I had because of the pandemic and this and that. And thank you for continuing to buy from us. And thank you, for continuing to use our service and everything when we're a little bit down and out. And when we get back on our feet, it'll be back at that level that you're used to. Okay. And then how do you reward that customer who's been with you all over the years? You give them an offer that they absolutely positively cannot turn their back on, an offer that they cannot say no to, an offer that you wouldn't give anybody else. And it's about relationships, and relationships, that's the currency of the future. That's the currency right now.
That's right.
Business relationships. And even after you digitize your company, there's got to be 50 million small businesses around here don't know the slightest idea how to do that. You go help them before you know it. That may be your new business.
Well said.
That may be, I was on a podcast with, there were 21 or 25 young ladies, and they were all dance instructors. And they didn't know what to do because they couldn't go into the studio. And I said, ladies, you got to digitize it. And some knew how to do it. And 21, and this is a group of them. They all talk. They all interact. One was down in Puerto Rico. One was in Savannah. One was in Chicago. And it was like this underground mafia sorority that they had of dance instructors. And I said, you got to digitize it. You got to make it where people can go ahead and cut the computer on and you got to show it. Half of them didn't know how to do that. I said, well, let's look at the walls. I said, raise your hand. Just give me a high sign, man. How many of you know how to do? Well, you got to help those that didn't. And why did you wait for me to be on the podcast and knowing that she did? Come on, ladies. So, man, that's a good idea, man.
Digitizing. And digitizing speaks to business continuity.
Oh, without a doubt.
Big time.
Without a doubt.
Having that digital footprint.
Yep. Persistence will get it for you.
That's right.
Consistency will help you keep it.
I looked at all the activities that children were doing. They started doing piano lessons via Zoom, basketball, right? We are in a new normal, like it or not. We have to adapt.
Yep.
And I heard you say digitize was one of them. Make your current customers maintain relationships, build that currency.
That's the currency. That's the equity, man.
That's right.
And, well, those are the questions that you got to ask yourself. Number one, who's your customer? Number two, who's your perfect customer? When I say perfect customer, you got to tell me in all the graphics, demographics, give me the age, give me the race, give me the sex, give me the income of your perfect customer. Number two, geographics. Where does your customer live? Okay, so we're in Atlanta. Is your customer in New York? Okay, well, if in New York or California or Florida or Chicago, how are you going to service them? Blah, blah, blah. And then last but not least, which is the critical question, there's so many entrepreneurs don't even address who's your non-customer. So they just focusing on the perfect. No, tell me who's your non-customer. In other words, who are the individuals or group of individuals who currently aren't using your product or service right now, but would use your product or service in the future if you made the slightest change, the slightest modification to it.
To adapt to that new
Just because they
audience,
buy,
right.
and this is what you teach.
Right.
Just because they buy from you on Monday doesn't mean they're buying from you on Tuesday.
That's right.
So come on, man, you got to grow the business.
That's right. So let's talk about business continuity. We talked about, small businesses, entrepreneurs, the small business community. And one of the things I talked about on the first episode of my podcast is what I do in a corporation, supplier diversity, where we help those businesses get corporate contracts. From your standpoint and perspective, what is an obligation of the corporation during this time to small businesses?
Oh, man, unbelievable. Karmetria, my mind goes back to the early 1960s. Malcolm X was on a book tour. And he was going around to colleges, and he was on a book tour, and he was in a city. And after he spoke, a young white female came up to him, completely enamored, completely engaged, and said, Minister Malcolm, I love your remarks and everything, and I'm so excited, and I'm just energized, and I want to do something. Please tell me what I can do. Minister Malcolm, what can I do? And Malcolm X took off his glasses and looked at her and said nothing. Well, as time went on, days, weeks, months, He saw it as a teachable moment that he dropped the ball and he felt bad. And Malcolm said, man, I made a big mistake. Of course, it's something to do. Well, I thought about that. And I thought about that time. And I said, if he were here right now, I know 3 things he would definitely tell corporations to do. Number one, all right now, as Robert Smith has said, Karmetria, there are 4,000 banks in the United States, from New York to California. Right now, 4,000 banks, all right? Of those 4,000 banks, only 38 are black-owned. 38 out of 4,000. If you got in a car, your little red car,
I love red.
and
What can I say?
from Harlem, New York, all the way out to Watts, California, and you stopped at every black community along the way, 70% of those black communities wouldn't even have a branch bank in their community. So what am I saying? What I want corporate America to do? I want you to take 5% of your profits and put it in black banks. And put it in black banks. I mean, black entrepreneurs, black aspiring homeowners, black businesses, parents with black kids trying to educate them. Man, we can't, and now I'm going to call it the way it is. We can't go into Wells Fargo. We can't go into Chase. We can't go into JP Morgan. I mean, you guys won't let the BB&T Regions Bank. No, that's not your, blah, blah, blah. But these black banks will. They will.
Yep.
So let's call it like we see, so, and when I say 5% of your profits, look, 5% of your profits and you leave it in there for 5 years. Let us benefit from the compound rolling over interest. Because when you look at those 38 black banks, Karmetria, what do they have in common? Number one, they got low-income customers, man. They don't come in with big profits and a whole bunch of a bag full of money. That's number one. Number two, multiple withdrawals. They can't even get interest off it.
Right.
There is absolutely no rollover effect. So they're coming there with just a little savings, and as soon as they put it in Monday, they're pulling it out Wednesday. I mean, who can benefit from that? So no, you keep it in there for 60 months. So that's number one, invest in black banks. Number two, invest in black businesses. Now, you and I, we've been in Atlanta for a while. Okay, people say, well, where does racism exist? 99% of the time, racism is the first face you see behind the desk. And it also applies to community. How come Candler Road and how come, Camp Creek and how come, Jonesboro Road can't look like Barrett Parkway?
Right.
And you're gonna let me drive up and down Jimmy Carter. You're gonna let me drive up and down Pleasantdale. You're gonna let me drive up and down Barrett Parkway, and then you're gonna take me to Candler Road, and then you're gonna take me to, wherever on the southwest side, and you're gonna tell me that redlining no longer exists. Sure, it's nonsense.
Right.
Come on, man. We know you're dealing from under the deck. Now is the time for you to say two things. Look me in the eye. Say, Dr. Kimbro, I will never make that mistake. I will never do that again. I will never do that again. Number two, I'm sorry. This is your opportunity to make amends. So number one, put your money in the banks. Number two, black businesses. And number three, critical, number three, you got to sponsor HBCUs. You got to help HBCUs. You're a product of an HBCU.
Absolutely. Southern University.
I stand before my kids. I tell them all the time, I never had a black teacher in my life. I never attended an HBCU, but I am walking distance to 70 years old, and that makes me historically black. I am, I am historically black, brother. I got two of my three daughters got degrees from HBCU, so I got skin in the game. I want to make sure that their shingle on the wall means something. Okay, so what do I mean? Okay, so right now, what do we have? Do the data. Look at the data. You got 101 HBCUs across the country, 300,000 students, black students at these HBCUs. And let's look at the determining factor here. Of the 300,000, Karmetria, my eyes, it just rips my heart. Of the 300,000, more than 60% of first generation. In other words, we need coaching, man. We need a hell of a lot of coaching, okay? Right. So of the 300,000, 60% of first generation, this will rip your heart out. 40% of those kids, of those 300,000, 40% come from households in which a mother and father can't give a dime towards their education.
Mm-hmm.
That means from the day they set foot on that campus, they carrying the freight to the day they walk across that stage. Come on, man. So you see that. Okay, so HBCUs only enroll 5%, okay, of all the black college students, from Harvard all the way out to Stanford, only 5%. But we produce 30% of the black doctors. 30%, 1/3 of the black engineers.
That's amazing.
1/3 of the black lawyers.
From HBCUs.
Accountants. Man, so these kids coming out of Harvard Medical School, coming out of my alma mater, Northwestern, man, they ain't going in the black community to go ahead and, take your vital signs. My doctor, man, Harold Moore, where did he finish from? Howard. Undergrad Hampton, Howard.
That's
my
right.
doctor, he's examining me for more than, 25 years.
That's right.
And look at his staff. Look at where all his nurses went, HBCUs. Right there, I can walk to his office. He lives in the same development as me. Sometimes he sees me walking my dog. I'm glad you walk on the dog. Yep. Yep. Tell you anything and everything you want to know about my body.
So corporations need to step up.
Yeah.
They have an obligation to the small business community.
Yes.
Through investing in black banks.
You do those three things that'll make
businesses.
all the difference in the world.
Well said.
Yep. All the difference in the world. And I don't care. You got to have a presence on the campus of these HBCUs, particularly in our B schools. I don't care if it's a lunch and learn. I don't care if it's a mentorship. I don't care if it's a group talk. I don't care if it's an internship. I don't care if it's a plant tour. You need a presence.
They have to invest in those.
Yes.
Because many of their employees, interns, will be black students from HBCUs.
Exactly.
I am a product of that.
Exactly.
And I talked about that in my first podcast, how Southern University was a pivotal point in my life and learning to speak up and getting skills. And even during the pandemic, I went back to my HBCU skills that I learned in college,
Yep.
right? Couldn't go get my hair done, couldn't do my nails.
Yep.
But guess what? I did it in college.
Yeah.
And that is what sustained me during the quarantine.
Wow.
So, hats off to HBCUs. Thank you for all the work you do in the classroom at Clark Atlanta University.
Man.
I mean, your kids walk out inspired. Mm-hmm. So tell me, what are some of the success stories of some of your students that you've taught? What are they doing now?
Oh, man, they call me all the time. I got them at American Express. I got them in real estate. I got an ex-student who wore the polo. He's vice president of, Oakland Athletics baseball team.
Nice.
And they call me up and everything, coming back. Dr. Kimbro, how can I help? And this, that, and everything. So, yeah, we got a whole bunch of success stories.
Good. That makes me proud.
And bunch of success stories. So, and that is the critical difference. I imagine I'd probably be the same way if I taught at a PWI, but there's a whole bunch of other things you're going to do at an HBCU. I mean, it's just a completely and totally different experience from a student coming in here. My office, Dr. Kimbro, man, my part-time job, and I don't have money, put gas in my car, here's $20. Or you see one of the workers, a woman who cleans my office, are you feeling good today? No, I don't feel good. I don't have money to get my prescription out here. I mean, it's just a different set and just a different relationship altogether.
When you think about the entrepreneur moguls, when I think of Magic Johnson and Jay-Z and Sean Combs and maybe Russell Simmons, what is their obligation to other entrepreneurs? Maybe those that are just starting out and admire them. What can they do, or what should they be doing to give back?
Well, you know what? It's really not an obligation. And the reason why I say that, because if they are a true entrepreneur, okay, Part of their DNA is continued personal growth and progress. And what is the highest form? What is the culminating point of personal growth and progress? It's called service. Giving and service is transformational. It is transformational, okay? That is the highest point. That is the self-actualized life.
Yes.
Okay? Self-actualization. First, you want food, shelter, and clothing. Then you get to a point where you personally want better food, shelter, and clothing. Then you get to the point where you want best food, shelter, and clothing. But after that, you want food, shelter, and clothing for your fellow man, fellow woman. So if they are true entrepreneurs and they are on that treadmill leading towards that goal and objective, they won't have to be told to do it. They will do it.
Comes automatic. That's right. Service.
Giving is transformational. They give it. I mean, that's why, you see it with Tyler Perry, paying for the funerals and this, that, and everything. And you see it with other entertainers and doing this. It's transformational. It's success is a 6-pointed star. And success is not about money. Now, you got a lot of folks who are still into that and everything, and I'm not going to begrudge it. It's your money. You worked hard for it. You do whatever you want to do. But it's not about money. But Dr. Kimbro, what is it? It's about progress. Listen, Steve Jobs gave 4 reasons why to be in business, and not one had to do with money. Number 1, he said, don't build a business, build a movement. Steve Jobs, don't build a business, build a movement. Number 2, make it easy for your customers to do business with you. What I said, 21 different ways to market or sell a product or service. You got folks out there who only shop online, so you got to be online. You got folks out there don't even have a computer, so you got to have a retail outlet. You got to meet the customer wherever he or she is,
Mm-hmm.
So make it easy for people to do business with you. Number 3, what I said about Charles Bonini, okay? Fulfill the dreams of your client.
That's right.
Fulfill the dreams of your client.
Providing solutions.
In other words, what is the wow factor? I tell my students all the time, you see that guy in the street corner with that cardboard sign, I will work with food? Got the same opportunity Bill Gates, got the same opportunity Oprah Winfrey. They give me pushback. Dr. Kimbro, how can you say that? Because anybody can wow the customer. Anybody can do more than what is expected, more than required. And I personally saw that twice. I read that Walt Disney, when he invented Disney World, man, he told him, he said, man, when I get through with Disney World, when I get through with Epcot Center, man, it's going to be state of the art. It's going to be top of the mind status. And it's going to be a little bit pricey. And it is a little family of 4, 1 week at Disneyland can run you anywhere between $8,000 and $10,000.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was asked, what in the world are you going to do for $8,000 or $10,000? You know what Disney told him? Memorable moments. I'm going to give them memorable moments.
Creating experience
when they spend
and
a week here,
sure.
Your little daughter, blah, blah, she can't wait to get back to that elementary school, tell her classmates,
That's right.
Look what I got.
And then they're going to go and create those memories.
Best,
memorable moments.
Best, that's right.
That's right.
Best
That's right.
advertisement. And the same thing with Phil Knight. When he invented the Air Jordan, it was not so much the Air Jordan shoe. Phil Knight wanted to be the first to have $100 gym shoe.
That's right.
Because they said, if Chanel can sell a bottle of champagne, a bottle of perfume cologne for $100, I can. And he said, come on, man, what are they going to get for $100 shoe, man? They're going to think that they can fly.
A lot of conversation around people that are in this economy. They're trying to pivot. They've been downsized. People are thinking about maybe now is the time to start my business. This pandemic has taught us a lot of lessons. And some people are afraid to do that. Some people are afraid of the jump, right? But they have a passion for it, right? But they maybe are comfortable with this salary and they don't want to do the jump or take the risk.
That's the problem. Raise your standards. You
Love
just
it.
said comfortable to sell.
Love it.
Raise your standards. You are where you are in life right now by the standards that you set.
Love it.
My body is in the shape right now because of standards that I set. Look at it, man. Don't you know? I told you I had a personal trainer.
That's right.
I haven't lifted a weight since Valentine's Day. I weigh the same now. Look at this.
What happened? You got distracted?
Yeah, man. Well, he
Pandemic
said, you can come over, you can wear the mask. I said, man, I can't wear no mask
And
when
work
I'm
out.
lifting,
That's
man.
right.
I'm choked to death, man. Raise your standards. The income that you have right now, that's based off of your standards. Now, why is that critical that you raise your standards? Because that is the only way. Once you raise your standards, you got to get rid of self-limiting beliefs. Mm-hmm. Once you say, I'm flying first class, enough of this coach anymore. And you're going to get pushback. Girl, you take your hips back to coach. No, who do you think? No one in our family ever, rode first class and everything. Get rid of the self-limiting beliefs. Mm-hmm. And that is critical. So number one, raise your standards. Number two, get rid of the self-limiting beliefs. And then so many folks right now, the last key is certainty. Once you are clear, the clarity is everything. Clarity is a force multiplier. Once you are clear, matter dissipates. When the idea is clear, matter dissipates. Remember, here we are, 1957. My father came home with our first television set. I was 7 years old. Big old wooden box, picture tube, big old dials on it and everything. The box was bigger than the picture tube. Picture tube is only about that size, but the box is this big, blah, blah, blah. But look at it now. Now, they say that your smartphone within the next 5 years will be your TV. Mm-hmm.
TV's on the wall,
That's right. No wires. You just drive a nail into the wall, put your phone on there right there, and watch TV right now. Why? Because the idea of what television is crystal clear now. Now they see it's crystal clear. So that, everything, every step towards progress, Karmetria, is more spiritual. Mm-hmm. We don't invent anything. We uncover it.
That's right.
We just, so, and that's why the critical times, with the racial tension and this and that and everything, we are finally becoming clear of who we are and what we are. And then the benefits that are going to come out of this. Man, when you bring everybody to the table, regardless of gender, regardless of race, regardless of culture, that's when the ideas flow. If you can just hang in there. Because the creator didn't create boundaries. We created the boundaries. Mm-hmm. And then once you let go of the boundaries, oh my God, exponential growth. And what is exponential? Okay, here we are, sequential. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Exponential, 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, 256.
Double.
That's the growth, man. And we got to be prepared for that.
That's right.
So that is a powerful metaphor. That is a powerful anecdote. I was with Andy Young, and he told me before Martin was assassinated, he said that one time they were in a hotel, and they were in Martin's room, and they were sitting around the table, and Martin was in a real good mood. And around the table was Hosea Williams, Jesse Jackson, Andy Young, all of his lieutenants. And he said, fellas, we've got to be crazy to think that we can change this country. And they said, Martin, what are you talking about? He said, man, we got to be out of our mind. But I will tell you one thing. He says, if we are fortunate enough to change this country, no one sitting around this table right now will live to see age 40. He says, that's the bad news. But then he smiled and he says, the good news is just think of the untold opportunities that generations to come will be given just because of the work that we're doing today.
You have been such an amazing force to the community, to the students in Clark Atlanta, and I just want to thank you for being a part of my podcast and encouraging entrepreneurs to continue to mind their business and how to navigate, through uncertain times. And not only did you give inspiration, but it's wisdom. And that is so important. So thank you, Dr. K, for your time.
Thanks for having me,
appreciate
Karmetria.
Thank you very much.
Oh, God bless.
A huge thank you to Dr. Dennis Kimbro for his time, inspiration, and more importantly, his wisdom and being a guest on the Mind Your Business podcast. If you want to learn more about his work, a list of his books are included in the podcast description. Thank you so much for your time. I really hope you took something away from today's episode. If you have questions about anything we've talked about today, feel free to reach out to me on my socials, which are linked in the episode description. And again, if you like what you've heard, subscribe, leave the podcast a rating, and share it with your network. I put out new episodes on the 7th of every month. This podcast is sponsored by the VDART Digital Talent Management product and solutions firm and wouldn't have been possible without their support. A huge shout out to the Russell Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship here in Atlanta for providing us an amazing location to record this episode. Production of the podcast is done by the Audiographies team, Denor Sapolia as the producer, and Connor Lacey as the editor. The music is by Keenan Willis and Yolanda Withers. Stay tuned, and I'll see you in the next episode. And until then, mind your business.